So thank you all for attending the CapeCodChamber Small Business Series. I'm Katie Atchison. I'm the Business Development Manager here at the CapeCodChamber. I would like to thank, before we get started, MassHire, in particular Neil and Neri, for coordinating our expert speakers for this entire series. And our partnership with MassHire Career Center of Cape and the Islands has been extraordinary. With that, I'm going to hand everything over to Candice here, who is, again, she's gracious enough to join us virtually from California. And Candice Pokk is a consultant at Segal. Did I say it right? Like Stephen, nationally recognized human resources consulting firm, to share her insights towards re-engaging the older workforce. So thank you so much, Candice.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know when you all can see that. Okay, so hi everyone. As Katie mentioned, my name is Candice Pokk. I'm a consultant with Segal's organizational effectiveness practice, and today we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting, retaining, and managing some of your older folks in the older generations of the workforce. So the topics that we'll cover today are, we'll talk a little bit about, who I am, what I do on Segal's organizational effectiveness practice, some workforce trends that we're seeing, some of the characteristics of having a multi-generational workforce and specific to the older worker. And then we'll talk about strategies and tips for recruitment, retention, and for managing. So like Katie mentioned, I hail from Los Angeles, California. I live in Redondo Beach with my dog Cruiser, and I have a handful of clients all across the US that I'm working with at any given time. I work with both corporate, higher education, and public sector clients. And so some of the ones on the East Coast that you may have recognized are, I work with Virginia Tech. I also work with Central Connecticut State University, Spirit Airlines, but I've spent a majority of my career working in consulting. So I worked with Microsoft and Jack in the Box and Raytheon and a bunch of large organizations that you may have heard of. And I'm a part of this organizational effectiveness practice. And essentially what we do is we make organizations a really great place to work. Places that are effective and efficient. And I'd say one of the key things that I'm certainly hearing a lot of my clients are up against right now are just the recruiting and retention aspect of the work, and just how much the pandemic has brought a lot of change. So you can see up on the screen here, I have a handful of things that my team does. So if you are interested in learning more about these things, I certainly would love to speak with you, and Katie can put you in touch, or my email is at the end of this. So really what I'm going to bring to you today are things that I speak on regularly, but also as a practitioner, the things that I'm working with organizations on a day-to-day basis to kind of tackle these challenges. So in terms of what some of the, kind of post-pandemic workforce looks like and what some of the trends are, is certainly everyone is facing this nationwide labor shortage. So, coming out of the pandemic, employers across nearly every industry are just facing this incredible labor shortage. So if you are feeling that, you are certainly not alone. And there's just quite plainly a deficit in talent relative to the business need. And so I've listed just a few things here that are contributing to that, and we'll talk about some of these items in detail that are specific to our conversation today. The first is there's accelerated retirements. So you have a lot of the baby boomer generation that is exiting the workforce, and with the pandemic, it really brought on an acceleration of that. People that may have considered working a little bit later exited the workforce earlier due to the pandemic. So that process was sped up greatly. Next, we're also seeing a big exit of women in the workforce, and just some of the challenges that are being faced with either caring for children or for loved ones at home. The millennial generation in particular is kind of being squeezed on both sides. You've got them having to focus on caring for elder parents and grandparents, and then you've also have them with new or children that need their attention, and so that's causing a lot of women to leave the workforce. Next is the pandemic really brought a rise of remote work, and so that's creating a tremendous amount of competition and is changing the landscape there. And then there's been a transfer of wealth. So one of the things that's happening is that the millennial generation is now inheriting a lot of money from their parents and their grandparents. And so what this is doing is this is creating a time when they can work on passion projects. Gig work is almost nearing 50% of what the millennial generation is focused on. At the same time, you've got declining birth rates, and so people are not just having as big of families. And then last, and this is the one that you've probably heard a tremendous amount about, is this Great Resignation. So some people are calling it the Great Reshuffle. Some people are calling it the Great Rethink. So you might have heard it in different kind of terminology, but all of these things are kind of impacting the workforce and the labor shortage today. So just a couple of key points here, compared to before the pandemic, the US government, had been issuing more visas. So that's another thing that's creating kind of this reduction in the available labor workforce. And then just the participation rate is down in particular. So, you used to have 61.7% of the labor force participating in 2020. It's predicted to be 60.4% in 2030. And so with the retiring baby boomers and the declining population rate, it's just reducing the overall number of people that are available to work. And you can see here, there were 6.5 to 7 million job openings that don't require a college degree, but 2.8 million unemployed people that could essentially fit the bill to fill those positions. So you can just see there's an overwhelming amount of need. SHRM issued a survey, and nearly 9 in 10 of the organizations said they're just really currently experiencing challenges to fill certain open positions. And 93% of employers are really struggling to hire entry-level positions. So some of these things might be things that you all are experiencing yourselves. 2 in 5 organizations said they're offering additional professional growth and development opportunities and an increase in pay incentives. 3 in 4 organizations agreed to increase pay to be in line with new pay rate offered to new hires. So people are certainly doing things that are trying to increase employees either staying with the organization or getting them to come into the organization, but oftentimes it just hasn't been enough. I'm just going to quickly skip through some of this because it's probably not as applicable. So let's talk a little bit about retirements. As of October 2021, there are 3.3 million more retirees in January 2020. So to give you an idea, we typically see about 1 million people retiring in the workforce. So there was an additional 3 million people that retired on top of that. And so what that's done is you've just gotten a tremendous amount of people that's leaving at one time. Obviously, retirement is at its highest between the ages of 65 to 74. And you're seeing women retire about 11 times more likely than men to retire, just due to often, women who retire are relying on a spouse, or they're in a situation where they might be getting some sort of other financial support. So in October 2021, the unretirement rate was actually 2.6% above the 2.5% rate for September and 2.4% in August. So, and what the unretirement rate measures is those who switch from retirement to employment. So there's hope for you all. These rates are still below the pre-pandemic trend of about 2.5% to 3%. And then compared to October 2019 and October 21, approximately 3.6 million more Americans were out of the labor force and didn't want a job. So there's still some people that are still leaving, and 91%, which is 3.3 million of those were older Americans aged 55 and older. In the third quarter of 2019, 48.1% of US adults 55 and older were out of the workforce due to retirement, compared to the third quarter of 2021, which was 50%. So certainly we're seeing the trend is in other areas is going up. And then between the years of 2008 and 2019, retirement population ages 55 and older grew by about 1 million per year. So it's certainly a cohort that is growing. However, between the years 20 and 21, the retirees 55 years and older have grown by 3.5 million. And so the median age of the population will continue to rise, with all baby boomers reaching ages 66 and older by 2030. Okay, so just real quickly, women in the workforce, like I mentioned, childcare is certainly impacting the workforce greatly. So while you're seeing 3% of the unemployment rate for men, you're seeing 3.2% for women. And compared to November 2020, it was 5.5% for men and 5.5% for women. So they were about even there, and now you're starting to see this real shift. Like I mentioned, remote work is really impacting the workforce today. So in March of 2021, 1 in 67 paid jobs in the US offered remote work. At the start of 2022, that number has drastically grown to 1 in 6 jobs in the US. So that's something certainly to be considering. Remote roles are the most attractive to people, with 44 applicants looking for remote jobs. So that's something certainly to be on the lookout for. It's an estimated that 73% of all departments will have remote work by 2028. 1 in 3 respondents would quit their job if there was not an option for remote work, and 52% would consider leaving their co-located company for a remote role. So again, something that is a big trend that's moving along. And just a couple of key points here on the Great Resignation. There's a record high of 4.5 million Americans that left their jobs as of November 2021. 3% of workers in November voluntarily quit their job. And this has created about 3 million open jobs compared to the pre-pandemic level of about a 4% unemployment rate, with a much lower participation rate. And so what you can just really see here with the Great Resignation is a lot of people, now that they have experienced working from home or they've gone through the pandemic, have really reconsidered what their priorities are. And there's been just a big shift in the workforce because of this. And for those of you who think that this might be slowing down, research is saying this is not slowing down anytime soon. It's going to be affecting all industries, and you're going to be seeing this shift most likely throughout our generation. So kind of buckle up, get ready for the ride here. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about the multi-generational workforce. So right now we're in a little bit of an unusual time. We have actually 5 generations that are in the workforce today. So you have the silent generation. So those that are born between mid-1920s and 40s, the boomers, born between the 40s and the 60s. So the silent generation really, embraces security and tradition and is risk averse. The boomers are, hardworking, value work over personal pursuits. They're really competitive. Then you've got Gen X. They're born mid 1960s to late 1970s. They hold over 50% of all leadership roles right now. And they're really adaptable, embrace technology, value work-life balance. And then you've got millennials and Gen Z. Millennials make up about a third of the workforce as of 2019. And then Gen Z, which is born, 1990s to 2010. By 2025, 75% of the US workforce will be millennial and Gen Z. So we have an aging workforce, as you all have seen. So 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 in the US every day, and this rate will continue every day until 2030. And so this is primarily the demographic that you all are probably targeting to either stay within the workforce or to come back to work. And there's good news. There is, I think, certainly an opportunity to make that happen. So some of the characteristics of the older generation is, baby boomers are really occupying these critical positions in the workforce. So we're seeing them occupy managerial and supervisor positions, positions in budget and finance, IT leadership, and the skilled trades. And Gen X is just really not a big enough cohort to fill in all of those positions that the baby boomers were occupying. And so most organizations really have not adequately prepared for the loss of those with intimate knowledge of, critical components of the organization. We often hear stories. We do a lot of assessment work, and so we'll often hear stories that, the janitor or the facilities person is the only person that knows that this special lever is hidden behind a tree on a campus somewhere, or how to fix this one particular HVAC system. And so we're certainly encouraging our clients to really consider, workforce planning and succession planning, because oftentimes there's just really limited workforce planning, succession planning, and professional development aimed at addressing older workers in the workforce, and really having a plan for what to do to either keep them longer or for when they leave. So some other characteristics are, the silent generation, the boomers are leaving with key knowledge and supervisory skills. I think this is certainly the biggest trend that we're seeing. And like I mentioned, Gen X is not large enough to fill that leadership void. However, I think where there's hope is there are also some projections of a healthier aging population that's really resulting in employees working longer. So the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that 45% of workers aged 55 and older are expected to retire after age 65, which is up from 15%. Recently, the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicted that the participation rate for workers aged 65 to 74 is projected to be around 30%, 30.2%. By 2026, which was compared to 1996, which is about 17.5%. So you're certainly seeing people stay in the workforce and are willing to stay in the workforce a little bit longer than they were before. So I think it's really a matter of encouraging and attracting people to your organization. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the things that you're probably most excited about, which is strategies and tips for recruiting, retention, and as well as managing some of the older workers. So here's some tips for recruitment. The first I'd say is really, when you're thinking about recruiting older workers, pay attention to the words that you're using in job postings. So one of the things that you'll often see is that, a lot of the bigger organizations are competing on pay, like we talked about before. They're able to offer, huge sums of money to keep people at organizations. If you're a little bit smaller of a company, or just in general, if you're struggling to maybe find older workers, your job postings are really serving as an advertisement. And oftentimes what we see is people are writing job postings internally for your organization. So it matches up with your lingo and the things that are relevant to your organization. But really, when you're thinking about your job postings, words matter, and they should be really focused at the person that you're aiming to hire. And so using words and stating things that are specific to them, like great opportunities for retirees, having a flexible schedule, or work from home, are all things that people want to hear, because it signals to them that I can see myself working here. It's going to match up with the stage and age of life that I'm at. Also, mentioning age diversity as a part of your DEI policy initiatives is really important. Often when we think of, so DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Often when we think of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're thinking about, race or gender, but age is certainly a part of that, right? And so if you have a DEI policy that is reflective of inclusivity to older workers, that should be indicated on your website. That should also be indicated in all of your job listings as well. And it really shows that your organization is really wanting to retain and make people of the older generations feel included. Next is, offer part-time positions or job sharing. So this is something that, as people are retiring or eligible for retirement, they often have, like I mentioned, some additional funds that can help them with, paying bills and stuff like that. Really what they're looking for is either some extra money or some purpose. And there's a lot of cases where they might not want to spend the full 40 hours at work. So if you have a position where you need to fill 40 hours, what you might consider is either job sharing or part-time work. So consider posting 2 40-hour or 20-hour positions, or offering roles with 30 hours of work or less. And we're seeing that this is really popular and working well. Next is offering flexible and remote work. So I certainly understand not everyone's able to offer part-time positions, but maybe you can present opportunities where they can work remotely, 100% from home, have a hybrid work environment where they're working a couple days from home, a couple days from the office. Or if you are in a situation, and that this certainly happens, where you absolutely need to be on site. So this is things like people that are in customer service roles, banks, things like that. Offering alternative working schedules to meet the needs of your older employees will be really important. So companies will do where you work your full 40 hours in 4 days. You have, ample time off. So if they want to go watch their kids in a soccer game, or their grandchildren, be able to be available for their grandchildren, being flexible to allow them to have a life and to be active in the things that are important to them, will really go a long ways towards being appealing to this cohort of employees. Next is what we're seeing across the board in terms of recruitment is it's not enough to just post and pray for positions anymore. With the large number of positions that are available, we're really encouraging employees to develop talent pipelines and being proactive in partnering with organizations that are specific to the demographic that you're recruiting for. And so older generations are certainly no different. A couple of ideas I just have listed here is, partnering with AARP. They have a senior community service employment program. I'm sure Cape Cod certainly has an unemployment office and has some other, specific opportunities to work there, but really developing relationships and partnering will be important for bringing in older workers. And next is really utilizing social media and advertising to bolster recruiting efforts. So you want to show older workers that are on your website, they're on your social media feeds. They have stories of them succeeding. And then utilize returnships to encourage seniors to come out of retirement. So create programs that focus on helping seniors return to the workforce and provide them with opportunities to upskill. So all of these programs look a little bit differently, but typically they're 6 to 8 weeks. It gives them an opportunity to get some skill development in and see if they can picture themselves back in the workforce. I know we're out of time, so I'll get through these last couple slides quickly. These are some strategies for retention. So like we mentioned, it's always easier to keep employees at your organization than it is to go out and recruit them from scratch. So if you have some employees that are nearing retirement or falling into this demographic, these are some ideas that will really help them. So like I mentioned, create options for flexible work, phased retirements, and telecommuting arrangements. Conduct stay interviews and have candid conversations with employees about their plans. They may not realize that there's an opportunity for them to take a phased retirement or to leverage some of the programs that are available at your organization. But if you're having these conversations, you can be prepared for both sides. Utilize data to track retirement. So, we do a lot of workforce modeling and things like that, but it really can be as simple as what's your average age of retirement. So you're prepared for this, and you can be targeting those individuals that might be getting ready to leave and presenting them with some other opportunities to ask them to stay. And then making sure there's a variety of learning and retraining opportunities targeted at skill development for older workers. That will be important to making sure that, that they feel like they have the skills to do the job. Focusing on work-life balance and wellness will be important. Continuous performance feedback and check-ins. So don't overlook, performance management. Making sure that you have robust recognition strategies, and then considering accommodations needed for older workers. So if there's things that can make their lives easier, that would help them from seeing or hearing or technology or not having to sit all day, those types of things, or not having to be on their feet all day, really consider what those accommodations are that would encourage them to stay. Provide opportunities for mentorship and developing younger generations. Often this cohort really wants to be available to teach and to train up the younger generation. And then explore alumni groups to keep older employees connected to the organization. So even if you have employees that are saying, I'm planning on leaving, what you can do is you can create an alumni group to connect them with your organization and to keep them in touch. So after a little bit of retirement, they may be encouraged to come back for consulting opportunity, part-time work, or some other kind of work arrangement. And then last but not least is, ensure older workers feel included and valued as part of the team at the organization. This is certainly a big one. And then this is our last slide for today. Here's some practical tips for just managing in this, kind of with older generations and a multi-generational workforce. So the first is really keep an open mind. There's a lot of stereotypes regarding older employees. And so, oftentimes these stereotypes are just flat out, false. Sometimes they're true, but, keep in mind just to keep an open mind just in terms of developing assumptions. So things like older employees can't learn technology or don't know how to use technology often isn't true. With the right training and opportunities, they have found that, they can certainly be upskilled and are willing to learn. Being willing to be flexible with the needs of your employees, particularly when it comes to performance management, career advancement, and working arrangements is important. There's not really one size fits all anymore. And so making sure you're having conversations about opportunities to meet their needs and in a way that's appropriate for your organization, leveraging their experience. So oftentimes you really want to talk with them about, what is the experience that they bring to the organization, and really honor those experiences and the tenure of older workers by providing opportunities to train and mentor younger generations like we talked about. And then tailor your communication and leadership style. So baby boomers and silent generation employees are more accustomed to hierarchical corporate structure and will generally respond better to more formal, constructive feedback than some of the younger generations who prefer feedback that is a little bit more informal and frequent. So that's it for me today. Here's my email address. If you wanted to reach out, if you have any questions, I'm certainly available to stay on for a couple minutes to answer those. Or you're welcome to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you so much, Candice. I want to share with Carolyn and Erin and anyone who might be watching this after. Candice mentioned a few times upskilling. There are quite a few organizations in Massachusetts that provide grant funding to small businesses for training of all varieties, from healthcare, food and service industry, to learning QuickBooks or just being more effective communicators. So a few of our previous presenters in the small business series, in particular Commonwealth Corporation, ComCore, from 2 weeks ago, shared in great detail about those programs. And it is valuable for everyone right now who's shifting from one job to another, one career to another, or for employers who have this perfect person who doesn't know what, how to do a particular task. So there are high-level education opportunities, and I believe the funding in Massachusetts is upwards of $30,000 a year per employee. There's a lot of money out there. So I see both Carolyn and Erin. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Do either of you have any questions for Candice in the moment? Or just thoughts?
Oh, I think you're on mute, Carolyn.
Okay.
How'd that happen? So the area that I'm having trouble recruiting is for the caregivers. I was recruiting for 3 positions, and it surprised me to learn that the receptionist position, I got a lot of response for that position. The case manager is a little less, but the caregivers, I got none. And then finally I got 3, and then they didn't show up for the interview. And when I try and break it down a little bit to see, obviously I have to make a change, so I try and break it down a little bit and who I can target. I was interested in targeting the older population, living on the Cape. We have an older working population. And I was thinking that maybe they don't want to go 7 days a week. Maybe they want to do something 1 or 2 days a week. But I'm having trouble breaking into that, where I would advertise to target that population. So I appreciated the alumni group. That's an interesting thought, in AARP, and maybe just changing the language that I'm using on Indeed. But did you have any other ideas?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I would encourage your current employees are your best referral source right now. So if you, and a lot of times people have referral programs where they're asking them to post a position and then they'll pay them for if people get hired. What we're encouraging right now is just ask people to post the position on their social media and consider incentivizing them for that, or making referrals to, if your demographic of worker is not super social media savvy, sharing it with their network in some way. And maybe that's just a gift card or some sort of incentive. So definitely, one, leverage your referral network. That's huge.
Okay.
2, the other thing that you can do is you can work backwards. So think about the best caregiver that you have right now, and talk to them or their boss and figure out, where did they come from? What makes them successful? What is it that they like about the job? What attracted them to the job? And write those things down and use that in your job ads, or figure out where they came from. So if what was appealing to them was the flexible work, or the fact that they get to make a difference, I don't know that specific line of work. Put those things in the job so it's appealing to people. Ask them what maybe they didn't like about their previous job that they get at this organization, and start really thinking about crafting a position that's appealing to the specific individual that
Thank you.
you're looking for.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Erin, anything from your corner? Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, there was a lot of great insight, Candice, into that, all into the big picture that I think we're all pretty painfully familiar with as far as workforce and hiring right now. But some really great practical advice is to, include, just, something that everyone's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. To include age in that is, that was my aha for this session today. So thank you for that.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I want to invite everyone who's watching here live and who'll be watching later. I have scheduled one more small business series for June 6th. So we have someone from SHRM coming, Mary Wright, and she'll be describing their professionals apprenticeship program. So apprenticing for professionals like HR, bankers, in professions that you wouldn't necessarily imagine apprenticeships would apply. So that's our next session. And thank you to Mass Hire and Nyla Neary. Thank you for those in attendance here. And thank you so much, Candice, for taking time out today to be with us here and to share all of those great insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.